Hey, what's going on everyone? Hope everyone's doing good. So, we now know what both the Xbox and PlayStation controllers will be like for both Microsoft and Sony's next consoles, and to be honest, it's pretty much what we all expected. I feel more of the same with a few calibrations to existing tech from previous controllers, and of course there is nothing wrong with this for the most part. From what I originally saw of the PlayStation 5 controller, I was put off by the colour, but when you actually think about it, what a lot of people point out is that your colours change. But the more I see it, the more I like it. So the PS5 controller, I think, looks like a good controller. But over the decades, we've become accustomed to both these companies, not straying too far from what they class as the standard or norm in terms of controllers. And us as gamers have certainly gotten used to controllers looking and feeling like this, and in many ways we can agree that right now this is the way regular controller should be for the most part, right? Well, if you know me, I've been gaming for a long time, and when it comes to controllers, I've done my rounds and have my preferred style of controls for certain genres, and my preferred types of controllers over all the years. But yeah, it's certainly my preferred style of controls for certain genres, and this is something that's always debated, right, when it comes to controls for certain genres. Not many people would argue against mouse and keyboard being a go-to for strategy games, as an example, and there's a wealth of people who would say the same for when it comes to first-person shooters. Mouse and keyboard are still the best and most accurate way to play these styles of games. Then controllers for D-pads come in for 2D games, and analog sticks come in for 3D adventures and platformers, etc. Then we have racing wheels for racing or driving games, and of course buttons and triggers for those refined and quick responses you need in most games to execute commands almost instantly. But as time has rolled on, it's become clear that your standard controller, and I'm talking about the established two analog sticks with a number of buttons and triggers at your fingertips, it has proven to be not the king or the most intuitive setup when it comes to many genres. Nintendo, of course, with their many attempts and successes to change controller input, have shown that if you try something new, not only does it make you realize that you were missing out on, but it also helps to create new genres and new gameplay mechanics that were either impossible before, or just nowhere near as intuitive as they could or should be. I could go through the list, of all these innovations and stuff, but I don't need to. And this is where I want to go in terms of how I feel about going into Sony and Microsoft's next generation of hardware. For the first time ever, and this is just a bit of history, with me. For the first time ever, since the Sega Master System and NES, both of which I owned at the time and still own, it was now this generation that we're in now, where I didn't own every major home console from every major console manufacturer, and the one console I decided not to buy and still haven't bought was the Xbox One. This had essentially nothing to do with the base hardware in itself. I was one of those people who actually thought Microsoft should have stuck to their guns and packaged a Kinect camera with all their consoles, because when it comes to gimmicks or accessories, developers feel more comfortable knowing that everyone has this console, has this accessory. So when it comes to designing games around those additions, they know that everyone has access to it, and their unique ideas have a chance of succeeding more or just being accepted more. The Kinect could have brought some unique gameplay ideas or system ideas if it was built in as standard, but I guess we'll never know what it fully would have achieved, given the fact that it was just now an accessory. Of course, I ranted about the Xbox One and the Kinect being constantly online and active all the time, as this has its own repercussions for us as gamers and consumers in the long run. I can assure you of that. But I never hated the Xbox One, as I was excited after what I thought was Microsoft's best console in terms of software, and maybe in hardware, which was the Xbox 360. A console I loved, even though the damn thing red ringed on me twice. But yeah, enter the Xbox One, and software-wise, man, virtually nothing for me. I was long done with games like Halo, Gears, and Forza. All series I thought had run their course. And looking at their latest iterations on the Xbox One, all solid titles, of course, but nothing about them made me want to jump back in, because they still looked and played pretty much exactly the same, which is fine as well. But once you've had so many games in such a short space of time, you got to think about, especially with Gears of War. I played Gears of War 1, 2, and 3 on Xbox. 3 Gears of War games on the Xbox 360, alone. And then you had Halo 3, Halo ODST, Halo Reach. It's just all good games, but third parties pumped out the new releases, of course. But by this time I had a PS4 and still got my PC, of course. Throw in the Nintendo Switch, and what reason other than cheap versions of games, through Xbox Game Pass, whatever. There was just nothing doing it. Well, that wasn't doing anything for me. But was there? There was nothing else for me to get the Xbox One for. Software, matters, people. Especially exclusive software, so I've spoken about before on this channel, and the PS4 and Switch, in my opinion, slaughtered the Xbox One in terms of exclusives, for games of my personal taste, of course. But to be honest, this generation, for what we call major third parties, haven't exactly blown me away when you compare them to what they've done on previous consoles like the PS3 and Xbox 360. As a quick example, I was a massive Mass Effect fan, and then we just look at Mass Effect Andromeda, and just let's not go there. So going into Sony and Microsoft's next console, it's hard for me to get excited about new graphics and new games, because for them, nothing can really fundamentally change in regards to how they play, because we know that the controllers we'll be using are virtually identical to the ones that came before. So what will we get? We'll get bigger worlds, even better graphics, even better sounds. But Uncharted 5, as an example, if I'm sure when that comes out, will still use, as we know now, analog sticks, and will essentially still play the same. I know that's an assumption, but I mean, how much could it change given the controller input? But some people are fine with that, and of course this will not stop these games from potentially still being great games. But I don't know, I don't know about anyone else, but there's for me an ever-growing feeling of being there and done that. The same feelings I had when I saw Halo 5 or Gears of War 5, or even though it's just called Gears 5. How can these games be different if the developers are restricted by the same control inputs? How can games evolve if one of the most integral parts of the experience, that being the controller input, doesn't change in any meaningful way? And I've spoken before on this channel. I've tried to clear myself a million times about graphics and stuff. Of course, we reach a point where we need to move on. But for the most part, we've essentially been playing with the DualShock, or the DualSense as it's called now. Never name they throw in there. Since the PlayStation 1 for the most part. It's I feel like it's run its course now, and it's the same for the Xbox. It's run its course, and we need innovation now. The funny thing is, we've seen so many examples, existing IPs that just flourish when a new control scheme is introduced. I've done videos on this channel talking about great games with new control schemes. Hell, for some people it'd be a step back if we get Pikmin 4 and pointer controls don't return or don't exist. I loved pointer controls on Pikmin 3. It made an absolute world of difference. I remember saying that Metro Prime 3 would have been more of the same. Still good, but more of the same if the Wiimotes didn't change that game up in terms of controls and how that controller ultimately affected gameplay and allowed for the design of new enemies and new gameplay ideas. I've said that Mario Odyssey, or at least Cappy, might not have existed if the Joy-Cons and their motion controls didn't exist. Same as ARMS. And then you see more subtle evolutions of gameplay and control with the likes of the gyro usage in Breath of the Wild, or the wonderful use of HD Rumble in 1-2 Switch and its minigames, even though for the most part people hate that game, or perhaps more its price, I suppose. But we're quicker on Breath of the Wild, something else I've said before. I could guarantee you that game would not be that same game if the gamepad didn't exist, because we have to remember that game was designed for the Wii U with the Wii U gamepad, and I had to pull and get rid of a lot of things in order to get that thing on the Switch. I'm praying to Crom, that No More Heroes 3 goes batshit crazy with the Joy-Cons features, like it did with the Wiimote and Nunchuck, because that's what elevated No More Heroes and made it even more crazy and fun. And you can see how people reacted to No More Heroes when it came to the PlayStation 3. No one bothered with it. It just wasn't the same. A change in control schemes offers a breath of fresh air to existing genres, as well as having the potential of creating new ones. I'm sure we'll get great software, of course we will, but there's certainly a strong part of me that feels we'll be getting a lot more of the same with these new consoles, and I can't help but wish that the industry would be braver, just like it was when it started. Plenty of failed experiments, but out of those experiments we got many revolutions, revolutions that should be commonplace in this industry of tech and innovation. But anyway, just my quick thoughts on the controllers we've seen from Microsoft and Sony. But what are your thoughts? Are you happy with potentially more of the same, or are you more like me, who wants to see more risks and innovations, taken with how we control our games to ensure that the norm is always challenged? Or just let me know your thoughts on Sony and Microsoft's latest controllers. Either way, thanks for listening, and I look forward to your comments below. Take care all, and peace.